You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640, Mo Kelly here. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app, and today is just one of those days in which I just got to ask the question out loud. Why can't LA catch a break? Why can't Southern California catch a break? It seemed for a moment that we had started turning the corner, that we had most of the major fires with a high percentage of containment. And then all of a sudden, at least in the grand scheme of things, all of a sudden, 10:45 a.m. this morning, the Hughes fire broke out near Castaic Lake off Lake Hughes Road, just north of Castaic Reservoir Road. And now it has grown to more than 9,400 acres. And depending on the outlet or information source that you may read, it will show anywhere from no containment to 5% containment. But the bottom line is it's burning out of control at this point. If there is any semblance of good news, I have not seen any information which says that structures have been damaged or loss of life. But given that it is burning out of control, we can't guarantee that that's going to be the case throughout the night. And speaking of throughout the night, we're going to have to deal with another high wind advisory through Thursday. And I don't think it's going to be as gusty in the terms of the winds that we've seen in the previous week and a half, but still the winds are going to increase throughout the night. And I was listening to Mark Ronner during the newscast talking about the prospect of rain, which should get here not soon enough, unfortunately. Rain is supposed to be coming maybe on Friday and will carry through the better part of the weekend. But LA seemingly just cannot catch a break. And if you're on the 5 freeway right now, you may be pleased to know that depending on where you are, you might have been concerned about whether it was going to be reopened in both directions. But the I-5 freeway through the Grapevine has been reopened despite the fires. The Hughes fire, the southbound side reopened around 5 p.m. and the northbound side reopened around 6 p.m. And the California Highway Patrol reopened the freeway after smoke was no longer causing visibility concerns on the roadway. And I'm relatively familiar with that corridor. I've driven through Santa Clarita, going through Valencia, going to up and into the Palmdale area. I've driven through it a number of times. And if you have any knowledge of that area, there's just a lot of dry brush on both sides of the freeway. And the good news, as I said earlier, no reports of structures destroyed. The bad news is it seems like this fire can just burn in perpetuity. There's really nothing to slow it down. And if the wind should increase, it could become even more problematic. We're going to keep our eye on the Hughes fire for the rest of the evening. In fact, I'll be with you until midnight. Yes, we're taking it all the way to midnight as we did for the better part of the fires before. We'll have Michael Monks, who's going to join us at the bottom of the hour with some updated information and also some other information regarding the Palisades fire. Some of the numbers are coming in as far as how much that is going to cost the city of Los Angeles. Just in case you didn't know, Pacific Palisades is part of Incorporated Los Angeles, so that falls squarely under the purview of the city of Los Angeles. And we'll see how much that's going to cost and where that money might come from and how much help we will get from the federal government regarding the Palisades fire. Also, and if you have lived in Southern California for any length of time, there used to be this consistent cycle. We would have fires, and then we would have a little bit of rain, and then we'd have mudslides. And unfortunately, all three may happen in the next week and a half. We might get the rain this weekend, but Altadena, they're already preparing for possible mudslides on the other side. And if you don't know, just in case you don't know, because you have the fires and it burns out the brush, you have this loose soil at this point. There's nothing holding these hillsides in place. And then you get the rain, and these hillsides literally just start sliding down and unfortunately sometimes take out houses in their wake. We're going to talk about that, and also we'll give you the updated evacuation orders and also locations of evacuation shelters for you, for pets, anyone else who may be impacted. And already multiple schools have announced Thursday closures due to fire. We'll tell you about that as well. But it's not all bad news. It's not completely all bad news, as LA has already approved funds relief for the Altadena area, LA County, that is. So there is a bit of good news. And there's also LA has approved relief funds for the San Fernando Valley residents who also have been impacted. So much going on in Southern California. Let me just say hello to the guys who are going to be helping me out all night long. Mark Ronner, you ready to do this one more time?
Oh, it's not just going to be one more time.
I'm not laughing at you, but you are so right on. Because can Southern California catch a break?
No. And based on everything we know, we can look forward to more of this in our lives.
Now, we don't know at this point as far as what was the precipitating act or what started the fire, but we know that there could be another Hughes fire tomorrow, to Mark's point, where the Hughes fire doesn't seem special in that regard. These fires can happen anywhere, anytime, for just about any reason, because the conditions in which these fires are starting have not changed. It's just as dry. It's just as arid. It's just as windy. So we might as well expect more fires, unfortunately, until we get this rain at least.
Yeah, to paraphrase the old Airplane movie, I think I picked the wrong month to go off of Xanax.
Oh, I was getting ready to say, pick the wrong month to stop drinking, but that's also
No, I haven't stopped that, no. We need more of that than ever at this point.
More so than water drinking? But never mind. Hey, Stefan, how you doing tonight? Hello, all things considered.
Mo.
Yes, we're working feverishly to get you the most recent information on the Hughes fire and more. We're sifting through all of it. We want to make sure all of it's accurate before we pass it on to you. But keep it right here on KFI AM 640. We'll be with you all evening, well into the night, all the way to midnight. So let's do this again. You know the drill, as they say. No pun intended. It's Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And when we come back, we're going to listen back to the press conference, which was around 5 p.m. So you can get some of the latest information, not only about the fire, but what law enforcement is doing to prepare to keep the bad actors out of the area, making sure that you listen to the mandatory evacuation orders and what they're putting in place, and so much more.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI, Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app, and as we continue to follow the events in Castaic, the Hughes fire, which has burned more than 9,400 acres and is listed between 0 and 5% contained. There was a major news conference earlier today. It was around 5 p.m. And you had, well, I thought it was interesting because they showed the overlap of the agencies which are fighting this fire. You had the Forest Service. You had, obviously, LA County Fire Department. You had the Santa Clarita mayor who was speaking today. There was a lot going on, and some of that information is very important for you to hear. So we want to listen back to make sure you have it. The first voice you're going to hear is LA Fire Department Chief, and this is for the county, Anthony Maroney.
So good evening. On behalf of Board Chair and 5th District Supervisor Catherine Barger, we're holding a press conference to give important information to the community of Santa Clarita and the Castaic area. I am Anthony Maroney, Chief of the Los Angeles County Fire Department. The Hughes fire is now estimated to be over 9,400 acres with 0% containment, with no structures reported damaged or destroyed. We have over 4,000 firefighting personnel assigned to the incident, and we had a very robust ground and air response to the incident that you see behind me. The LA County Fire Department is in unified command with the Angeles National Forest, and we are getting assistance from our state partners at CAL FIRE. I wanted to give a weather update because the weather is what's predominantly driving this fire and its spread right now. The National Weather Service has extended the red flag warning through 10 a.m. on Friday for most of Los Angeles and Ventura counties. Light to moderate Santa Ana winds will continue tonight and into Thursday. The situation remains dynamic, and the fire remains a difficult fire to contain, although we are getting the upper hand.
That was LA County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney, and you might have heard that he acknowledged LA County Board of Supervisors Chair Catherine Barger. This falls within her supervisor district. We tried to get her on the show this evening. Her office said that she may be available tomorrow evening, pending obviously the pressers, and she will hopefully come on tomorrow evening sometime in the show to give us the latest in the way that the LA County Board of Supervisors have been very responsive over the past few weeks, actually all the time. They've been very accommodating as far as coming on the show, coming on KFI, and giving us the latest information. So we hope to have on Supervisor Barger tomorrow evening. But also, if you were listening to Chief Maroney, he was talking about the different agencies involved, CAL FIRE, the U.S. Forest Service, and how they all have to work together hand in hand to make sure that this situation does not become worse than it is or imperil other areas beyond right where it is, beyond just the 9,400 acres which have been burned so far. So with that in mind, here is CAL FIRE Director and Chief Joe Tyler.
Normally my office is located in Sacramento, but I have found the need over the last 2 weeks to spend my time here in the greater Los Angeles area. We have been impacted significantly over the last 2 weeks, as we all know, related to the Palisades fire, the Eaton fire, the Hurst fire, the Lydia fire. And as we continue through these weather conditions, we recognize that it's not over yet. We recognize that we still have a couple of days to go. So the state of California brings its full force of the women and men of CAL FIRE, supporting the Los Angeles County Fire Department, our local fire agencies, the Angeles National Forest and the Forest Service abroad, as well as our law enforcement partners who are doing so much to respond to all of these emergencies together. Cal OES has utilized funds to bring together pre-positioned resources across Southern California, and the California National Guard has located aircraft, both rotor wing helicopters and fixed wings mobile or modular MAFS units to be able to supplement the air tankers that we have here available locally. We had a robust response today, and as you can see behind us, the responders are doing great work to try to contain this fire. Certainly, we are not out of the woods yet. It is important to take heed and caution and follow the directions of local law enforcement and your first responders as they are asking you to evacuate the area. Doing that will allow our fire resources to be able to conduct perimeter control and extinguish the flaming front of this fire. Many times we find ourselves trying to rescue evacuees, but today the community heeded that lesson, and many evacuated the area, allowing them to fight the fire. We will continue to be here to support, not only now, but as we move into the next phase with the potential of rains coming forward and trying to mitigate the landscape to avoid debris flows and flooding. We will be here for you.
That was CAL FIRE Director-in-Chief Joe Tyler. Before that, you heard LA Fire Department, LA County Chief Anthony Maroney. And this is U.S. Forest Service Chief Robert Garcia. And it gives you a broad overview of these agencies who have all come together to work on not just this fire, but also the surrounding fires. And this is Robert Garcia, U.S. Forest Service Chief.
Just want to first say thank you to Sheriff Luna and Fire. This isn't a mutual threat zone, so Los Angeles County Fire Department and the Angeles National Forest entered into unified command right away. I also want to say how extremely proud I am of the way our responders moved into this area and established command and really established some incident objectives working together. The conditions that we're under aren't as severe as what we've been facing over the last week or two, but what you saw today is indicative of the conditions that we're in terms of the vegetation. So although we're not under a particularly dangerous situation in terms of the wind, our wildland fire condition is critical. Absent wind, the fire is going to move through the vegetation like you saw today with the slope and chasing fuel. Very dangerous conditions as to what led to the U.S. Forest Service closing all of the Angeles National Forest, and this is exactly an example why. The other thing I want to offer in terms of resources, I hope that all the citizens here in the area are proud of the pre-positioning and the robust response. This area always sees a robust response in the mutual threat zone, but our incidents between the Eaton, the Palisades, our local mobilization centers, our pre-positioned resources put us in a position for multiple waves of surge resources, both engine crews on the ground, hand crews, bulldozers, and aircraft. And so the response you see is a result of the local cooperation and the local pre-planning in the geographic area, not only within the LA area, but also with our partners in the state of California to ensure that we are prepared for what we're now facing.
When we come back, we'll hear from KFI's own Michael Monks as he has been following the events in Castaic with this Hughes fire and also what's been going on more, especially in Los Angeles with the Pacific Palisades fire. We know more about what that's going to cost the city of Los Angeles and how that might all filter out. KFI AM 640, we are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI Mo Kelly here. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And as we continue our fire coverage, the Hughes fire is still listed at 9,400 acres burned, between 0 and 5% containment, depending on your information source. There's the Acacia fire that we're also following, which is in Ventura County. And now that has burned 2 acres, still relatively small, but it's something that we are going to watch throughout the evening. And joining us right now is KFI's own Michael Monks to give us some sense of, perspective, context. Michael, I don't know what to say. I started off the show tonight asking the question, can LA, Southern California, catch a break? And I don't think it can.
It really can't, Mo, and good evening to you. It's another fire night here in Southern California. I mean, it's a lot. It's just been a lot because it's only been 2.5 weeks since the fires erupted in the Palisades and around Altadena, and those were terrible and destructive. And we have not been able to get to a point to where we feel like, okay, we're past the incident. Let's begin the mourning. Let's begin the rebuilding. We haven't gotten there yet. Those are still active fire areas. And now we have this fire erupting in the North Country. And let me tell you about the little fire that you mentioned in Ventura. This thing burning near Castaic, this massive one, that started as a little guy too. And that's what's so scary about these things. You know, over the past few days, we've had little flare-ups. We've had little brush fires pop up along some freeways and out in the wilderness. And we're all so anxious right now that we're watching them like hawks because we know how rapidly and destructively they can spread. And this thing in Castaic was fast. It started with the initial reports, it's like 40, 50 acres. And that's a lot of space. I mean, who has an acre yard in LA proper? You know, that's a lot of space. And then it blew up really fast. 500 acres, 2,000 acres, 5,000 acres. And now here it is rapidly approaching 10,000 acres, tens of thousands of people evacuated, tens of thousands more waiting for a mandatory evacuation warning. We're fortunate. Nobody's been hurt. Nobody's lost their home. But this is so scary and so scarring. And it's just when, like you said, can we get a break?
I wonder whether we just move from one tragedy and disaster to another, before I talked to you, I made mention of how we may get some rain this weekend. That's the good news. But also, look out, the mudslides might be coming right behind the rain. It's almost like we're damned if we do, damned if we don't.
No question about it. I talked to a meteorologist from the National Weather Service just yesterday about this, and some of the language that was used was the weather we're getting this weekend is almost the opposite of these Santa Ana wind conditions that we've been dealing with. This is something we've been needing, a little bit of moisture in the air, humidity that's not dangerous for us, and goodness knows we could use some water falling out of the sky. But now we have these burn scars in the Palisades and in Altadena, and that could lead to some significant trouble. So now these emergency workers who have already been busting their tails for a week and a half addressing the fires have to make sure they're still on the scene and bolstering the areas around it to protect it from the mudslides that might come from this. So we're finally getting the thing that we need, and it's bringing with it more potential destruction.
You make mention of something that I've been thinking about, and that's first responder fatigue. The shifts are already 14, 16, 18 to 22, 24 hours in length. No exaggeration. And we've been calling in first responders from different states, different counties. There has to be an accumulative fatigue in all of these fires. I don't know if we'll be able to have the resources in the short term to keep dealing with these natural and sometimes unnatural man-made disasters.
They're going to have to figure that out because it is massive. And when you are calling in firefighters from Mexico and from 2 states away to come down and help us out, then, you know, and also knowing that it may only get worse as far as the climate goes and the conditions go. And it could also only get worse if LA County and the rest of the area is not better prepared to address these things. I've seen the firefighters out in the field. I've seen them on their breaks from this thing as they cycle in and cycle out. They get a little bit of breathing room, and it is some serious exhaustion. Look, this is the job they sign up for. They know what they're getting themselves into, and they are strong and brave, courageous, and they can get it done. But it is a lot of work. Here we are in the media, kind of feeling fatigue. You know, it's a lot of talk about this, and we're not hauling that equipment around. We're not getting the flames up in our face, not at the level that these guys are. I mean, it's
the smoke inhalation. I mean, just the horrible air quality that they're dealing with in those conditions.
You know, that's it too, because the air around the Palisades, the air around Altadena was so bad, you really did need to wear a mask. And then, even though the scene was still destructive, just several days later, you could walk around without your mask on and not feel too bad. I think they want you to wear a mask, so don't take my advice on that. But I was reporting and didn't have a mask on. I thought the air feels kind of good almost. And now we've got another massive fire. That this is one of the reasons that you might not see people go back home very soon in the North Country because of this. You know, the air quality could be such that it's disruptive to their lives for a little longer than they want, even if the flames don't make it to their home.
As we're getting further into the story, and what I mean by that is we've had more time to at least deal with the Pacific Palisades fire. Do we know at this point, or do we have any strong evidence to lead us in a direction of what started the fire?
I think there's a lot of conversation about it, and we should probably withhold until, you know, there's some official analysis that is presented. But this is going to be the number one question I think people want answered, even beyond, how do I get my insurance to be more affordable? How do I rebuild my home? How do I rebuild my life? Is who did this? If somebody did it, who did this? Why? How? And what were the circumstances? That's question number one for a lot of people. And we do live in an age of instant conspiracies. Yes. It's unfortunate. So as soon as the fire popped up in Castaic, you'd see social media posts questioning the origin of it. And, you know, they may be right. But, you know, the fact that so many people's minds go there can either speak to a number of crazy people living among us or just people who are fed up with the answers that we've gotten over the years for things like this. But that's where a lot of people's heads are right now.
One of the answers, which is coming into focus, is the preliminary cost of the Pacific Palisades fire. And there's a new discussion, what I want to get into on the other side of the break, this new discussion of how much it is going to cost, who's going to pay for it, and how the hell are we going to pay for it? Can we do that next, Michael Monks?
It'd be my pleasure.
KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly. As we continue our coverage of the many fires across Southern California, we'll have more with Michael Monks in just a moment.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI, Mo Kelly. Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. We're continuing to watch the Hughes fire, which has burned more than 9,400 acres, 5% containment. That is a cautious estimate, a reasonable one. And also the Acacia fire. I'm right in the middle of a conversation with Michael Monks, KFI's own Michael Monks, and we had segued back over to Pacific Palisades and how that fire, even though it's not even in the rear view, there's still work to be done on the fire itself. The conversation now has moved forward to the cost and the rebuilding effort. Where is the money going to come from? Who is responsible? Michael Monks, what do we know about Pacific Palisades as far as the cost to the city?
I would say don't be surprised to see Mayor Bass put up a GoFundMe page at some point, because the city was already broke before this disaster. We've been talking about it a lot. I sit through a lot of city council meetings, and I'm surprised that it doesn't get more attention, really, because they're broke. The second largest city in America is completely broke, not a little bit broke.
Well, let me jump in there. There's no piggy bank, and this is a real question. There's no piggy bank for a rainy day or a fire, a flood, an earthquake, any type of extreme emergency, or is it always dependent upon the state or the federal government to come in and intervene?
I'm glad you asked, because in municipal budgeting, it's responsible to have what is called a rainy day fund,
right,
for events just like this, or just simply a reserve fund. And the city certainly has that. And they like to keep it at 5% of the total of the general fund. So, you're talking about a $7 billion budget in this city. So they like to keep a certain amount in their reserve. But if it should fall below their stated goal to below 2.5%, then they are in a fiscal emergency. And that's when they have to start having 10 out of 15 members of city council vote in favor of spending any more of their money, basically. And that's almost where they are right now. They didn't have as much revenue coming in last year as they had budgeted and announced and prepared to have. And on the worst part of it is they're getting sued all the time. And they're settling these lawsuits for massive amounts of money, and it has cost them so much. They're overspent. They've overspent this year by about $300 million already. And a good chunk of that total is from lawsuit settlements, maybe involving the police department, maybe involving injuries people suffered due to the infrastructure. And the irony there is that the city, during the creation of the current budget, didn't have enough money to fund the positions that could better improve the infrastructure, the street lighting, the potholes, the sidewalks, and that sort of thing. So they're already in trouble. Before the fires hit, they were talking about and have now done the steps necessary to borrow money to pay for lawsuits. Not to borrow money to fix the sidewalks, to put the street lights back in action, but to pay for the more lawsuits that they know are coming down the line. And today, the city administrator had to go before the city council per their demand last week to get an update on how much this Palisades fire was going to cost. And he said within the first few days, they were able to calculate that it's probably going to cost at least $385 million.
I remember Mayor Bass talking about and actually celebrating the fact that the Biden administration had pledged like 100%. I don't know if it was matching funds or just full, just making LA whole again. Do you remember that? Do you understand what was that about?
I do. And even the city administrator said, we hope that most or all of these costs can be reimbursed. The 6 month or 180 days that then President Biden gave as an assurance to the city was that the federal government was going to cover everything. But what that means is it's supposed to cover the cost of the workforce and the cost of the debris removal. The rest of the cost incurred by the city will have to go through the governmental process, right? They have to fill out applications just like the individuals who have lost their homes are now waiting in lines and filling out forms and navigating that tangled web of bureaucracy. The city has to do that as well. So in the short term, the city will have to front these costs. And those costs mounted pretty quickly. You know how fast that Palisades fire burned, and some of that property belonged to the city. They lost 12 city parks, 2 rec centers. They say that cost them about $155 million in damages. The Palisades Library is gone. They chalk that up to about $55 million. We had $75.8 million of LADWP property damaged or destroyed by this fire. We saw $55 million in damages to sewers and streetlights. So, I mean, it's a lot of money that they're going to have to address, probably with their own cash for now, until they can get reimbursed. And as I mentioned, they're already scrounging around the couch cushions looking for any change they can get.
Okay. We mentioned the previous Biden administration. We know the President Trump administration, President Trump is going to be here Friday, if I'm not mistaken, touring this disaster area. How much, or should say, how concerned should the city of Los Angeles be that President Trump take this disaster relief in a different direction than what President Biden had originally promised?
Well, there have been rumblings that maybe there will be some conditions on future federal aid for LA because of the very strong position local officials have taken on immigration, for example. And we haven't seen that come to fruition yet. We do expect a visit from President Trump very soon. So maybe we'll see a photo op with Governor Newsom and President Trump, Mayor Bass and President Trump, and let's hear from them directly. We know that President Trump doesn't really hold back. He doesn't have much of a filter, so he'll share how he feels about the situation, and we'll see how the local officials respond, because it was just a couple of months ago that they were scrambling at City Hall to put in place this sanctuary city ordinance to offer what they see as protections to illegal immigrants here in Los Angeles from President Trump's promised mass deportation. So that was a bit of an affront to the now president. And then, of course, Governor Newsom has flat out called the special session in Sacramento an attempt to Trump-proof this state. And now Trump is going to have to come here, and the folks on the ground in California are going to have to put their hands out because they're going to need money from President Trump's administration.
And that's assuming we have no other fires between now and 5 minutes from now or 5 days from now, which could complicate this whole issue.
You really don't know. Nobody hopes for fires, and we were certainly hoping that maybe we would skate past this week's Santa Ana wind event the way that we pretty much did last week, right? We had another forecast for Santa Ana winds. It didn't produce too much. We felt the winds, but no major fires. And here we are as this forecast is finally supposed to lighten up from the winds, and it got us at the buzzer. And so we've got this massive thing. And by the way, I mean, the worst of those winds for today are supposed to be happening tonight and into tomorrow morning. So that fire in Castaic, I hope the firefighters are taking the breaks that they need in between their rounds out there, because they've got a long night ahead.
Thank you, Michael Monks. Appreciate all your reporting.
Always a pleasure, Mo.
KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
When fire starts, KFI doesn't stop.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live.